great if prospective users within your target market could tell you exactly which features they wanted in an app and all you had to do was go and build those features? Sounds like a pretty perfect scenario, doesn't it? Well, if so, then the way you're planning to build and grow your no-code app really needs a shift. And in this video, we're going to talk through the 3-step process for how to build, launch, and grow your no-code app with exactly the right features that users actually want to pay for, but without users telling you which features those are. Stick around until the end because if you get this wrong, you could end up building a bespoke app, which is usually a death trap for new apps and businesses. Before we jump in, if you're new here, my name is Kristen over at Coaching No Code Apps. We help non-technical entrepreneurs build custom apps so they can start their app-based businesses or grow their existing businesses all without coding. And if that's what you're doing, then subscribe to this channel for new videos every single week. All right, so we're over on the iPad here, and this 3-step process is actually pretty simple at its core. So step 1 is to identify the core problem that you're solving with your app. Step 2 is to identify the main outcome you want to enable for your users. And then step 3, right in the middle here, is to identify all of the pain points your prospective users experience as they are trying to go from here to here. Based on each of these pain points that you can uncover, it's your job to then create features that will help eliminate those pain points and instead enable users to get from problem to outcome a lot more easily. Understand that users themselves, or prospective users, should not be the ones to tell you what features will take them from problem to outcome. Instead, they should tell you which pain points they experience in trying to go from problem to outcome. And this is the mix-up that I see happening that can lead into that trap of building a bespoke app. Now, this is really important, and here's why. So when we look at our Build to Scale program, for example, we help entrepreneurs go from idea to first users with their apps. Now, if we're to look at this as a product, we have a problem that we're solving, which is our users or our clients don't know how to build a custom app and they don't know how to get their first users on board. Those problems go a lot deeper, and we could look outside of the technical problems to the emotional problems. So, why they want to build an app in the first place. And you should be doing that too. But for the purpose of this example and planning out your product, we're going to stick to just those surface level kind of technical or tangible problems that users are experiencing. We have that problem, and then we have an outcome that we are helping our users or clients achieve, which is having a custom app that they've built and can bring their first users on board. If we were to go out and ask a subset of our target market which features, for example, they would want to see in a product that takes them from this problem to this outcome that we just went over, we would get all kinds of different ideas for features, so to speak. I mean, we might get hundreds of ideas, and that might sound great because it's lots and lots of feedback about what would be helpful. But again, this is the trap that we don't want to fall into. Getting a feature list like that or an idea list would create a massive roadmap for your product, and that's hard to manage on your side, but it's also a hard product to market or sell, and honestly, probably a hard product to use as well. And even worse, most of those features would probably only be applicable to a very small amount of users. So maybe one feature would be applicable to 5 users, and that is not scalable. And the point of building a custom app is so that you can have scale and you can have leverage. Instead of getting a big idea list or feature list like that with our own example, we helped figure out how to take people from idea to product and first users By having conversations and identifying their problems and their pain points. Now, another important thing to understand is that we had a lot of experience in helping people deal with these problems and pain points already. Now, not necessarily in the context of this specific program or product for our example, but with other services or with other programs or courses. And so you should have experience too that comes into this, right? You shouldn't be guessing. You should already have certain insights that are going to help lead you in the right direction. But then when you figure out these pain points that you are trying to help eliminate, then you're going to use your expertise and insights combined with feedback on the pain points in order to develop the right product. Here's a really good example of this. So we have a visual way that helps people correctly create their database structures on Bubble. Now, if we had gone to this subset of our target market and asked, what do you need in order to be able to create the right database structure? We would have gotten lots of ideas, but it would have been hard for people to convey exactly what it needed to look like and exactly what would be most helpful. So instead, we understood and learned that creating the database structure was one of the really big pain points, and we helped people in doing that. And so we were able to uncover exactly what those pain points looked like. And we used our expertise in being able to solve that problem and came up with the feature instead of getting a direct feature request. This kind of aligns with one of our core values at CNCA, which is be the guide. And this is relevant to you in your app, more so than you might think on the surface. So in taking people from this problem to the outcome, we could operate in a couple of different ways, right? As we go along like this, from problem to outcome, we could just simply answer questions as they come up. So anyone going through this process could say, I have this question, what's the answer? And we could give the answer. Now, this would kind of be the same as you just getting a feature request and building the feature. So maybe a test user or an early user comes onto your app as you're continuing to build it out. They're going from problem to outcome and using your app, and they say, hey, I need this feature. Hey, I need this feature. And so you just build the features. But when you operate like that, you're not actually using your own expertise. More isn't always better, or just the direct information isn't always better. You have to look at that overarching process of going from problem to achieving outcome and really truly understanding all of the pain points. So going back to our own example, if we were to simply just answer direct questions as they came up, well, people would have a really hard time going from problem to outcome, because oftentimes the questions that they're asking might not be the right ones. Maybe they're missing a key piece of the overarching strategy that they just don't even know to look for because they haven't successfully gone through a streamlined process like this before, right? And so if you are just to, answer questions or just build the feature requests, you're really missing a big piece of the puzzle. You're just giving more and more, right? And those extra features or that direct information is not always the most helpful thing. You need to make sure that you're actually solving pain points versus just giving information or giving more features. We're going to look at a project management app example, and we're going to target this at contractors who are renovating houses. So contractors with small teams, and their job is to renovate houses, and they need a project management app, and we're building that for them. Okay, so the typical approach that we often see is to go and find, 10 different contractors and say, hey, we are building the solution. What kinds of features would you want to see? And we might get 10 different ideas from each of those 10 contractors. And so we might come out of that research session or phase with 100 different feature ideas. So that's a hard app to build and manage yourself because, I mean, honestly, it's huge, but it's also a hard app to market and sell because what even is your selling point with an app that big? Imagine trying to build an app that does literally everything that these contractors might need and then trying to sell that to them in a concise way. And then after that, bringing them on board and actually having them be able to use it, the first version of an app like that. I mean, it would be so hard to use, and gosh, can you imagine the troubleshooting that would be involved after that? It would be a nightmare. That research phase for our app needs to look differently. Let's break this down by problem and outcome. So this is just a hypothetical scenario. I don't have any experience with contracting and job sites, so we're just going to make these up, but the concept will still be the same. So let's say our first problem is having trouble with the entire team and deliveries all showing up at the exact job site location on time. Okay, because if you can imagine a home renovation, there's going to be lots of different people involved, lots of different deliveries, lots of people trying to come to the same place, and a lot of stuff happening at the same time. So I'm just going to say getting there, and that applies to everyone. Okay, now the second core problem that we might find trends around is that these contractors are having to order inventory from 20 different companies, and they need to create 20 different orders, and they need to go through the process with each of these companies to figure out how much of everything they need in the first place, and it's very time consuming. Maybe just ordering the inventory alone can take a week of time. And so we're going to say inventory here. Now, keep in mind, no feature talk yet. We're just looking at problems in the process of going from, having a new job site that where this home needs to be renovated, it's in bad shape, to having a fully renovated home. Okay, so maybe the next problem is that everyone who comes onto the job site who's a part of this contracting team has to track their hours, and nobody tracks them accurately. And so maybe some people are being underpaid and maybe some people are being overpaid. Probably more people are being overpaid, and we don't want that. So we're going to say tracking time. And then we'll have one more. We'll say maybe the owner, not the owner, sorry, the project lead. The project lead for this whole renovation has to communicate with the owner, right? So someone owns this house and they've hired this contracting team to renovate it, or someone's purchased this house, right? So they want to know what's going on with the project so that they can plan around that. And so the team lead for this contracting team is constantly having to take calls from the owner or make calls to the owner, and is always having to answer questions, and maybe it kind of feels like it's demanding, and maybe that could leave the owner of the actual home itself unhappy, and therefore maybe this contracting team could just get bad word of mouth. I mean, that could really spiral, but we're gonna say here communication. Okay, so in talking to these contracting team leads, we have narrowed down that these are the real root problems that they experience in managing their projects. Now we want to look at the outcomes. Now, some of these you can come up with on your own, but some of these you might have to tease out when you're actually having conversations with people within your target market. And what I mean is you might need to dig a little deeper to get the specific outcomes that they need. So for example, with everybody getting to the job site on time, well, the outcome is pretty simple. We want everyone there on time and at the right place, because, with everyone having the address all, I don't know, on their phones, maybe they're typing it incorrectly, or maybe they've been told the address over the phone, they've written it down, and then they look at their handwriting later and they can't tell if that's an O or an A, that type of thing, right? So we want everyone on time and actually at the right place so that the job can start on time, so that then the outcome for the owner, right, the project itself being completed can happen on time and it doesn't end up, going a day late or 2 days late, that type of thing. With the inventory, we could do the same thing and just say, well, we want to make ordering inventory easier. But if you think about the process of having to order inventory from 20 different places and trying to consolidate that into making it easier, well, it could mean a lot of different things. And so that's where I was saying you might have to dig a little bit deeper, tease out some details. And so in this case, we might, through having conversations, be able to figure out that ideally, if ordering inventory for an entire job like this could take less than 2 hours, that would be like the dream outcome for these contracting teams. Okay, now if we have a constraint like that, where we are reducing time, we're not just streamlining the process or making it easier, but we're actually aiming to take this process that takes people a week of time, and maybe a week of time just because it's so annoying that they kind of spread it out over multiple days, and we narrow that down so that it takes less than 2 hours. Well, we can use our own expertise and we can come up with features that could help them do that. For the outcomes for these last two, the problem is with tracking time, right? Nobody tracks time correctly. So what we really want to do for people is make it so that nobody has to track in the first place, right? That's the ideal outcome. And then for that communication, fielding all the calls from the actual owner of the house or having to make lots of phone calls, we want to go from 10 calls to, let's say, 1 call per week instead. That's the outcome we're looking for. So we have a set of core problems or pain points that we've figured out, and we have some very specific outcomes that we want to try to help our users achieve. And now we're going to look at these and figure out which features are going to get our users from here over to here. All right, now we're gonna take a pause here, and the first thing I want to say is if you're finding this video helpful, if you could give it a like down below, we would really appreciate it. It helps us help more people. But the second thing is, even if you've started building your app, if you take a step back and you look at it from this vantage point, it doesn't mean you have to start over, but this can mean that instead of building out the 5, 6, 7, 8 features that you're trying to put into your first version, you can strip it back and you can focus on these core features that need to be built first because you know they are the problem solvers. And then you can keep the other feature ideas for later. And we have other processes that can help you go through those in strategic ways and make sure that they're needed now versus later versus a little later or a lot later. And so if you check out the description down below, there's resources and templates and extra training to help you do that for free. So definitely grab those. If you're finding yourself in that spot where you've kind of already started with this, you don't have to start over, but I do want you to step back and look at your app and what you're doing through this frame. We're going to now come up with the features for this hypothetical example app. So we are trying to take these contracting teams from problem to outcome, and we've identified these pain points. Okay, so the features that we could come up with are, the first one is that the main project lead for these contractors could have the ability to add their contractors' phone numbers, and anyone who's involved in the project, add their phone numbers into the app and add the project start date into the app and add the project coordinates into the app. And the app can send a series of text messages leading up to the project with the exact start date, start time, and coordinates. And that way everyone has the exact correct information and nobody needs to make phone calls. And that solves the problem of everyone showing up at maybe different times because they didn't get it right, or showing up at different locations because they got the address wrong. Okay, so when we are going from problem here over to outcome, we are eliminating that pain point, right? And we're making sure that everyone gets there on time at the right place. Okay, actually, I'll write that a little bit differently so we can have the actual features here. We'll say an SMS for time and coordinates. Okay, so that's our feature that takes them from problem to outcome. The next pain point that we uncovered was the process of ordering inventory. You have to order inventory from all these different locations, and it takes lots of different calculations. Now, there's a couple ways we could look at this. We could try to build out a feature that connects to every big construction company and pulls their inventory and has all these different calculators connected directly to there, and we calculate the amount of inventory needed, and we set it up so the orders go directly to these companies and all that kind of stuff. But that's like 10 apps in and of itself. Okay, so we're not going to do that because we don't need to do that much just in order to solve the problem. Where we can simplify, we should simplify. Okay, so we have our constraint where we want ordering inventory to take less than 2 hours. So what we're going to do instead is have some simple calculators in the app. And actually, we have an API that we found that will connect to a calculator and pull in the correct information. So we don't even have to build out the entire calculator in and of itself. Again, a hypothetical scenario here. But let's say we've done that. And what we're going to do is allow our contracting team leads to put in the measurements for different components of the project. Measurements for how much wood they need, how much lumber, measurements for how much sod or landscaping mulch they need, how much paint, that type of thing. Okay, we allow them to put in measurements. So the size of a wall or the size of a yard or something like that, and it spits out the amount of each product. Okay, and basically what it does is create a shopping list. All right, so we're going to say calculator with shopping list. Now, the contracting team lead then just takes their shopping list, and then they can go to their own choice of supplier. So whether that be a big box store or maybe they have a more private supplier, and they just take their shopping list with them, right? Way simpler. We've simplified it for ourselves. We've simplified their usage in the app, but we've made it so that their purchasing process is really quick because all they have to do is take their shopping list and say, hey, I need this much, and that's it. Okay, so problem, outcome there. Okay, now that third problem was that people don't time track. They don't remember to time track. And so they're getting paid too much, too less. The budgeting is all off. And so what we're going to do is we're going to stick with this SMS theme, right? And we're going to create an SMS tap in out. So the app already knows the job start time and it already has everyone's contact information. So for us, it would be pretty simple just to add one more step. And when the notification gets sent out for the actual job start time on the day of, well, we can include a tap in option. Okay, once we've arrived at the job location, we have the contractors we show them a quick option to tap in, right? Tap here to tap in, and it automatically clocks them in. And then at the end of the day, we can have it set up to where the team lead knows that the project is going to end at a certain time. And so we schedule the tap out as well. All right, now, is this going to eliminate the problem altogether? No, but it's going to help. And it's the first version of eliminating the problem. So we test it out and we see, are people still having trouble? Well, if yes, then we can tweak it. Are they not having trouble anymore? Or is it, maybe they're having a little bit of trouble, but it's so small that nobody even brings it up anymore because it doesn't even take up space in their mind anymore. Okay, well then we're good to go. And that last big bottleneck was just communication with the owner of the actual project site in and of itself. So there's no clear way to communicate the progress of the project, and so the owner is calling and the contracting team lead forgets to call them back, and then the owner is, not happy, and all that stuff. There's uncertainty there. And so what we want to do is have a way for the team lead to upload, let's say, images and notes and dates on those. So there's a place in the app where they upload an image, they add a note, and there's a timestamp on it. And I guess depending on the project, right, every week, the owner gets an automatic update where it takes the pictures and the notes and the dates and says, look, here's the project progress. And so now, the outcome that was ideal for these users was to have only one phone call per week versus like 10 or however many are happening right now. And so what could happen is this gets sent out to the owner, and then the contracting team lead can follow up with one phone call afterwards because they know that it's going to go out at a certain time. So they call and they say, hey, did you get the project progress update? And they can answer any questions from there. And if the person didn't get it, well, they can say, hey, well, check your email, open it up right now. Do you see it there? Okay, great. Do you have any questions now? Right, so that streamlines their process, and now they've narrowed it down to one call per week. If you get this wrong, right, if you go to your target market and you say, hey, what features do you need? Right, if you get that feature list, you're going to fall into the trap of building a bespoke app. And that's not scalable. And that's not why you're building the app in the first place, right? You're building the app for leverage. And so you don't want to fall into that trap of just getting a feature request and then building it because you're not really sure what else to do and you want to add as much value as you can, right? There's good intention there, but it doesn't lead to the right outcome for you or your users. I mean, if we look at this home renovation app example that we just went through, if we had gotten feature requests from our prospective users, maybe they would have asked for time tracking capabilities, but maybe they would have asked for it in different ways. Maybe one person would have asked for a way for contractors to log in and clock in and clock out, or maybe someone else, maybe they don't want their contractors logging in, and maybe they want just the contracting team lead who's paying for the app wants to be able to go in and clock everyone in and clock everyone out. And so maybe because you've gotten both of those requests, you just decide to build them both in. And so now it's not just as simple as building a time tracking feature, because now you have to build a way for the contractors to log in. So you have to build a contractor portal and a contractor user type and, a dashboard and all of that, right? So you can see how this can so easily just spiral out of control when instead you can use your expertise to say, well, these are the bottlenecks. This is what I think is going to work now. Let's build the simplest version of it first and then test it with the users. So put it in their hands and actually see, does it solve the pain point or does it not? Building a bespoke app, which is this trap that's so easy to fall into, is hard for you. It's hard for you to build an app that big. It's hard for you to manage and troubleshoot an app that big. It's hard for you to market and sell an app like that. It's hard for users to come on board and actually be able to navigate an app like that. And so it's hard for them to even want to stay on it, right? It creates a really difficult business model for you, right? That just gives you no leverage. But building a solution, keyword solution, streamlines that. It helps you lean out your scope, which by default helps you launch earlier. It makes it easier to manage your app and troubleshoot your app, right? It makes it easier for you to actually intake feedback and get targeted feedback. It makes it easier for users to test your app because it's easy for them to learn the app and navigate the app. And it's easy for them to give you feedback on actual pain points because that's what the app has been built around. And so they're not going to give you feedback like, oh, I think this color should change, or I think this should look a little bit differently, because that's pretty useless for you at the end of the day when you're trying to make sure that your product actually solves their problem and is something that they're going to pay for. If this is the process that you want to follow with your own app, and remember this applies whether you have or have not started building your app yet, and you want to make sure that you're setting your app up for success and scalability from both a technical and a business standpoint, then head to coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop so that you can take a deep dive into applying this strategy to your own app and taking the next steps toward success. So head to coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop. We'll look forward to seeing you there. I hope this was helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.